Okay, it's time now for episode 93 of the Press Box Podcast. Today, we have a special guest for you. We have Stamatia Scarvelis. Stamatia is an Olympic athlete who competed in Tokyo just a few months ago. She is a hammer thrower, and she's also a graduate of the University of Tennessee. She's a six-time All-American, and she is a tremendous hammer thrower, young in the sport. She's only been at it for 3 years, but she has a tremendous future in hammer throwing, and we're excited to have her on the show as she competed for Greece in the 2020 Olympics a couple months ago. So Stamatia Scarvelis is our guest today, but remember to interact with us on Twitter at PressBoxPod, our YouTube channel, the PressBox Podcast, and of course our Instagram page at PressBoxPod. All ways that you can tell us what you think of the interview, maybe give us some suggestions for future interviews, and interact with us any way that you'd like. So without further ado, here's our interview with Stamatia Scarvelis on the Press Box Podcast. Okay, welcome back to the Press Box Podcast. I'm your co-host, Ralph Miranda. I'll be flying solo today, and this is episode number 93. We have a very exciting guest for you today, a young lady by the name of Stamatia Scarvelis. Stamatia is a graduate of the University of Tennessee. She's a class of 2019. She is a hammer thrower, and we're looking forward to talking to her about that. Those of you who watch the Olympics, especially the second week when they get into track and field, they don't show the hammer throw and the shot put as much as they show the sprinting and that sort of thing, but they do show it, and it's a very interesting event. So we're excited to talk to her about that. Stamatia has done a lot of work in that area. She qualified for the 2020 Olympics. She was a member of the Greece Olympian team. As I said, she's a graduate of Tennessee. She transferred to Tennessee from UCLA. She's a six-time All-American, a three-time SEC champion. And one of the things that I think is really exciting, she did win the 2019 SEC Outdoor Commissioner's Trophy. And it's designed for one male and one female athlete who records the highest individual point total at a conference meet. She became the first female Tennessee athlete to earn that honor since distance specialist Chelsea Blase took home the award in 2016. So without further ado, Stamatia Scarvelis. Stamatia, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. It's an honor to be involved and love to just spread the word of track and everything there is to do with it.
Well, we're so excited that you took time out of your busy schedule to join us. So I guess I want to start with a little bit about how you got to Tennessee. I know you transferred from UCLA, so I assume you're from California. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I was born and raised in California. And starting out the college process, I really didn't know too much about the SEC, so it wasn't really in the back of my mind too much. I kind of stayed around the Pac-12 for most of my visits and ended up at UCLA. My brother was actually there at the time as well. He's a 2016 Olympian in the shot put. And so I was able to actually spend those first 2 years with him at school. But for me, it wasn't working out, and it wasn't a good fit for me. And at the end of my second year there, I had a redshirt year and then a redshirt freshman year there. And after that, I decided to leave. And the story actually is I was in the Rio Olympics watching my brother. I wasn't competing. And I had I was out there searching for other schools. And that's actually where I first met the UT coach, was in the Olympics, in the Olympic Stadium, where we first had our one-on-one discussion. We had talked on the phone before that, but that's when we really had a meeting at the Olympic Stadium. And, you're talking about goals and everything, and you're sitting right here in front of, the biggest of goals. And I went immediately from the Olympics to a visit to UVA, then to a visit straight from there to Tennessee. And then I had about 2-3 days back in California to decide. I just packed everything up and came out to Knoxville. How does that make sense?
Well, that's you should be commended for that, because that's not an easy thing to do, to pack up and move somewhere where you're not very familiar with. And I was listening to one of your, and I want to give you a commendation for this, one of your videos where I guess when you come someplace new, you really don't know anybody right away, and you're trying to assimilate yourself into the team. And you were able to not only assimilate yourself, but I think you also became one of the team captains. Is that right?
In my second year, yes. The first year, I mean, it's definitely a culture shock. It's just a different, way of living coming from LA. I mean, LA
Right.
was a lot for me, and it wasn't something that I really loved. I'm come from a smaller town in California. So coming here, it was definitely different. I mean, I had to find, apartment for myself. I definitely had to grow up a lot, just kind of being on your own. In LA, I had my brother there. I had family that was, a couple hours away. Here, I'm a couple hours away flying, not just, driving. So
Right.
I really had to figure stuff out for myself. And what transferring did actually for me, it's not an easy thing to do. And what it forces you to do is realize what you have to change within yourself as well. That was the biggest thing. I knew UCLA wasn't the perfect situation, but transferring, you really have to come to terms with what you need to change for yourself. I had to look a lot about how I was training, how I was conducting myself, and that was huge props to Coach Newell, John Newell, who's my coach and who was my coach at UT. And I remember on my visit, he had a 3-year plan worked out on his whiteboard. Kind of a big overview of what each year will bring. And it's like the first year I really learned how to just actually train productively. The next year we learned how to really apply that, into competitions. And so it was a big process and a big leap of faith, but yeah, it's worked out amazing. I love Tennessee, and I'm still here. Almost now it's I think my 6th year. Yeah.
I want to pyramid a little bit off what you just said. Moving to Tennessee, as you said, it forced you to kind of grow up a little bit and kind of really see what you were made of, because you had to go somewhere totally new. How much, and obviously you were in the 2020 Olympics, how much did that move, getting away from family and a comfortable environment to somewhere where you had to really, as you said, kind of grow up and find out what you were about? How much do you think that really helped you to make the Olympics?
I think it helped me greatly in being a part of the SEC too, which is something I'm sure we'll get into. I mean, that helped me a bunch. It's a cutthroat, highly competitive conference, and the Pac-12 is, it has some top level athletes and it has some top end, but the expectations you have walking into a conference meet is so much greater than anything, and you're having top level world competitions, a couple times a year, where you're able to see the best of the best. And so that's something that really prepared me. But like you're saying, yeah, just moving somewhere, having to kind of go all in on this. You don't have any real external factors, or the comfort of home or the comfort of family. It's kind of just forging that mindset of, I'm here, I have to find a way, I have to make a way for myself. And so that can probably, I think that's really what pushed me as far as Greece as well, because the past 3.5 months I was in a dorm in Greece, not with my friends again, not with my family. And it's a lot lower living standards than a dorm in Knoxville, Tennessee is, so that's something else as well.
When did you decide, obviously coming from a family where your brother, you said, was in the Rio Olympics, so obviously I'm sure you had a desire to be an Olympian early on, but what was it and when was it at Tennessee when you thought to yourself, I can do this, this is going to happen?
Yeah, I think from when I was a kid, like the only ever job I wanted was to be a professional, to be an Olympian was what I wanted to be.
Okay.
And I remember, I mean, I have this photo of myself standing in front of like a Greek, it was from the Athens Olympics, it's the Greek flag, and I'm standing out there with my little track medals that I won. My I think that's when it all had started. And I was very fortunate enough. My parents weren't athletes, but my brothers, both of them got into track and field, and I had to do whatever my brothers were doing. And so I remember it really, I think, hit me when Nick had qualified for the Olympics, my brother. And I really wanted to go as well. Like I said, whatever they do, I have to do as well.
That's
Um,
right.
and I think at that point we had started competing for Greece. And so um, internationally, you're able to compete in so many more international competitions. We were there for European championships. I was there for age group championships, it's like European under 23 championships.
Mhm.
So you're kind of used to this travel and this elite level. And so it's like, well, what's the next step? Next step's making a world championship. Well, what's beyond that? The next step's making the Olympic team. And I think I knew I had potential. I was very lucky in high school to have a very good coach. And I think that was on my mind is I want to be an Olympian. I want to be an Olympian, but you have no idea the work it takes really. And at UCLA, that's where I really felt like, well, I need to make a change if I really want to achieve this goal. I don't want to just settle and become an athlete, just become an athlete that checks in and checks out.
Right.
So that's where the move went to Tennessee. And even then, that was the goal leading up into 2020. It would have been the year after I graduated. So it would have been a real big buildup, one year after the other. And I'd say my senior year was a really tough year for me. I had a surgery, and it was a highly emotional year, ups and downs and all that. But qualifying for the world championships that summer, that's when I, really thought like I'm in the mix of this. I'm, in contention for the Olympics. And now after going to the Olympics, you realize, well, I just want to do better. So that's the goal for, the next one.
That's the goal for Paris. The goal for Paris, right? Right.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the Olympics. Obviously, when you first stepped in Tokyo or arrived in Tokyo, I know these Olympics were unlike any other that we've had because obviously there were no fans allowed and it was all the testing and so forth and so on. But I'm sure it was still a great experience. Talk to us a little bit about that experience and some of the things that you some of the things that you were able to do or not do, because obviously your event was the second week, I assume. Talk to us a little bit about the whole experience.
So how we were able to do it, which I think was a lot different from a lot of countries. I know the US, they have so many athletes. They were really kind of sending them in close to their competition date, leaving very close to, when they finished. We were fortunate enough Greece had a plan in 2020 to be in Japan for a whole training camp, and we were actually able to still do this. So the Greek track and field team went to Misato, Japan, July 15th, and we were there for about 12 days. So I was in total for Japan for about 22 days, which is a long time. But when we first got there, the travel getting just through the airport was about 7 hours once we landed in Japan to leave it was a long process of just lines, testing, waiting, walking, different, stationing, processing. But once we got to Misato, we weren't allowed to leave our hotel room. We weren't allowed to, even use the elevator or go in the lobby. They were taking it very, very seriously because it was probably a big risk to even have athletes out in, not the Olympic Village.
Sure.
And that was more of the bummer of anything, was not being able to see really the country. But
Right.
how I think of it is we were able to just spend a lot of time, at least with people who were, Japanese, are people that were helping us. We were able to spend a lot of time with because we weren't able to go anywhere. These people were incredibly, kind. They helped us with anything we needed. I needed, a type of medicine that I had forgotten in Greece, and immediately someone was out there helping me, trying to get it for me. And so that was our experience in the hotel. It was boring because we weren't allowed to go anywhere. Sunday was, a day when no one had any training. We were all just in the hotel going stir crazy. But yeah, that routine was, we definitely bonded with each other a lot.
Right.
But yeah, they were amazing hosts. And then from our training camp, we went on to the Olympic Village. And I mean, the Olympic Village is a pretty cool place to be. That's definitely the highlight. I mean, the literal competition, Olympics versus World Championships, it's roughly the same level. But the esteem around the Olympics is because it's the world's greatest competition, and you're able to be around other athletes and see other sports and meet other people.
Right.
So just walking into my dorm room, or like my room, and you look out and you just see all these other buildings with all the flags hanging from their balconies. It's a really like surreal kind of feeling. To then you walk around the village. Everyone always wears their team jersey or team uniform. But that was a really, really amazing experience. I mean, they did a great job with under the circumstances, and it's more of a bummer that no one was able to experience, I think, how great of hosts they were.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, every morning in the village we had our COVID tests, and then we had to go for breakfast. And I mean, the dining hall was 2 floors. I think it was able to hold like, actually, I can't really remember. But it had 2 floors, and there were plexiglass through everything, so you had to sit, in your little stall. But still,
Right.
I mean, the athletes, they're everywhere, and you're seeing a 6'6" rower next to a 4'11" gymnast, and everyone's going through the same process. And yeah, the food was really great. But yeah, I it's a little bit of a bummer because I think people were less inclined to really meet and mix.
Right.
But still, I mean, I think one of my family members had told me this on my way there. She said, no one else is going to have the 2020 experience. So
That's right.
you're one of those Olympians who no one else will be able to say they had something like that.
That's right. And just think in another 40 years or so, you can tell your grandkids, hey, I was in the 2020 Olympics. And then, probably go down in history.
Yeah.
So obviously you want to go to Paris, and that's your goal. And now talk to me a little bit about, we only have 3 years until Paris. So that kind of changes this, I would imagine, changes your schedule a little bit. So how much does that loss of a year affect training when you're trying to do that?
I don't see it as necessarily a loss. It's exciting. It's exciting for a lot of athletes, especially athletes who are on the verge. I mean, I think a lot of athletes are going to continue on training because of this shortened time period. For track and field, you have how the schedule usually goes is you have, your Olympics. The year after, you have a World Championships. Then you have a dead year. Nothing happens. Then you have another World Championships, and then the Olympics.
Okay.
So it really seems like a whole cycle going through. Now with all of this, we're going from Olympics. This next year, we have World Championships, another World Championships the next year, then straight to the Olympics. So it's really condensed, and it's really encouraging athletes. I think there's a major championship every year. So I don't necessarily see it as losing a year. I think of it as this is momentum, and this is, a lot of people lose their edge, kind of that extra year, that dead year where there's nothing really going on. It really makes the process seem that much longer. So I'm seeing it as I have 3 years to just capitalize on this. Another year where I'm, younger. I'm going to be 28 at that point, which is still a fine age for throwing. But yeah, I hadn't made any plans after this Olympics. The whole goal was, a short mindset. You get there, you do your best, and you evaluate what you want to do after the fact. And going and competing, and I finished much, much higher than where I started. And I do not think I was anywhere near my final potential.
Okay.
And so that just leaves me feeling like I feel like I can beat a lot more people, and I think I can do a lot, better. And I want to be at the next Olympics. And, I feel very comfortable on that stage. Sometimes you have athletes who get really nervous. They don't perform well at the big meets. Now back to back, Worlds and Olympics, I've, gone and thrown very close to my, season's best, if not personal best. And I feel like if I'm just able to just get training in, that's a whole other aspect of throwing, is I'm a little bit behind in the hammer throw,
Hmm.
a little bit young, and I haven't been doing it as long as a lot of my competitors. So if I just can catch up in any way to that, I think my goal is to be making finals from here on out. Next up is World Championships next year and European Championships, and then reevaluate from there and go and take it year by year. But that's kind of my approach, which
Okay.
yeah.
Good. Excellent approach. And talk to us a little bit now about the hammer throw. I mean, obviously, it's not going into the garage and picking up a hammer and throwing it. It's a little bit more complicated than that. So talk to us a little bit about it, a little bit about the training for it. Like, I mean, obviously, what do you do to train for it, and a little bit about the mechanics of it, if you don't mind.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't be surprised how many people have asked me if I throw a real hammer. Yeah. But so the hammer throw, it's basically, a lot of people know what shot put and discus is, especially here in the US.
Right.
That's what high school athletes throw. And that's why we have a little bit of a lag in development in the US, is because athletes aren't throwing hammer or javelin so much. They're not in high school.
Right.
Now, I started to play around with it. I knew the basics when I was, in high school, because I was fortunate to have, a very successful coach. And when I really started to learn was at UCLA. That's when you learn the mechanics. The hammer is how I explain it to people. It's the one, it looks like a shot put with a wire and a handle. So that is the hammer. And the whole concept of it is that you are doing winds, and then you do 3 or 4 turns, as we say, the technical footwork, to which you then release it into the sector. Now, I wouldn't say I started really until my freshman year of college. And out of all the throwing events, out of all the track events, even I would go as far as to say it's one of the most technical. You're speaking in degrees, you're speaking in, radius and how much ball speed, how much force into the ground you're putting into something. So there's a lot of mechanics involved, which is why repetition goes so far. And you look at some of the best hammer throwers. The woman who won this year, I believe, has to be in her late 30s. The one who won. I mean,
Interesting.
Yeah, and you just have experience and you have repetition, and I mean, all you're doing is footwork and ingraining those mechanics into your body. And throwing is like, we're very strong athletes, but it's being able to apply strength with as much relaxation as possible, in a way. If I go in and try and be strong, I'm going to end up hurting my throwing. That's one of my biggest faults, is that it's a good thing I'm really, really strong, but in some ways it's bad because I let that overpower my technique. So it's kind of hard to give like a basic little a lesson just through chatting, but I just emphasize it's extremely technical event, and it's a lot more. I mean, a lot of times people just think I'm spinning around on one foot. I think it's hard for people just watching to comprehend, really, unless they've actually tried. Which I think sometimes makes it harder for people to watch because they don't truly understand what's going on. But yeah, I mean, I can give a demonstration sometime or something.
Yeah. We'd love to have that. That's awesome. And forgive me for asking this question, because I don't understand the events that well, but it seems to me from watching them that there's some similarity between the shot put and the hammer from the standpoint of technique. Would that be correct?
There's a lot more similarities between the shot put and the discus.
Okay.
Yeah, the general movement and mechanics is the same footwork. You're starting with your 2 feet, in the back of the ring, and you're going through the same kind of footwork. Now, where you hold the shot put versus then where you hold the discus, that's all very different. But hammer is completely different footwork from the two of those.
Okay.
Now in build, a lot of shot putters could probably be decent hammer throwers. But I would say it relatively stands alone when it comes to the technical side of it. So in learning shot put, I had done shot put for, that's what was my specialty in high school. And that's what I had planned on being in the Olympics for. But then learning an entire new event on top of that was a whole nother task. And so I competed in 4 events all through college, at SEC championships, as many competitions as I could. So this actually, after graduating, was the first year I've only done one event, which is the hammer. So my Greek coach, he calls me a baby hammer thrower because I've really now only this will be my 3rd year only focusing on the hammer. Because when you're balancing other events, there's a reason why people aren't doing multiple events in the Olympics. It's really hard when you get the higher and higher level you get. It's really hard. The more focus you have to have on technique and the more focus you have to have on that one specific movement. So that's why you don't see a lot of people doing multiple events in the Olympics. So that's where I really think I need to be excelling. I have the strength, definitely, and I just need to be able to be getting just reps in.
How difficult, we've had an Olympic swimmer on, we've had a steeplechase runner on, and obviously those events, they're timed events. So you're looking at, especially for a swimmer, minuscule amounts of improvement, because the difference between 1st and 5th could be 0.2 of a second or less than that. So in an event like the hammer, I would imagine when you start out, and as you said, you're only in your 3rd year, your gains would be maybe quicker as you go forward, but then there's going to get to a point where you start to slow down and technique has to take over. Would that be correct?
Yes. Yeah. Gone are the years where you are just going out and competing whenever you want and you're having, 3 feet, improvements. A centimeter is a huge improvement. Just to have a personal best is huge. The higher you get, the smaller and smaller your jumps are getting. You're pushing for that extra 3 centimeters. You're pushing for that extra, couple feet. I would tell people I'm about this far away from the Olympic standard, and it's such a small distance. And that's what's the nitty gritty part of track and field and swimming is it's all down to your result. There's no real politics involved as in, a selection committee or anything like that. If you do the mark, if you run the time, you're in or you're not in. It's right. It's a hard line. My brother had thrown. He had unfortunately thrown in the time of COVID, so a time that was they weren't taking any more of the standards. He threw the Greek national record about, I want to say 7 centimeters under the qualifying standard. 7 centimeters, and
right.
He didn't end up going to the 2020 Olympics. So it's tough stuff, and when you're getting high, the more elite level, the bigger wins are just tiny centimeters. But that is true. I've had competitions where I've won by 2 centimeters. And that's just that's how the sport goes. And you kind of just get numb to it. And if someone goes ahead of you by 1 centimeter, you just have to respond and put your work in and hope for the best.
Talk to us a little bit about, when they show the Olympics on TV, really swimming and the sprint races are about the only ones where they may show us a qualifying heat or something like that. Usually when they show the track and field events or the field events, you only really see a little bit of the finals. So talk to us a little bit about, one, how many Olympic athletes are competing in the hammer when it starts, and what is the process to get to the finals?
Okay. So the process for some events, like the sprints, they take the top, I think, there are about 50 or 60 athletes. Now in a lot of running events, it's the 40. Now, field events, it was even harder to qualify for the Olympics. It's the top 32. So we had 32 athletes that were in the field events, all across the board. So what they do for qualification is they split up randomly the field. So in hammer throw, they call it Group A and Group B. And you don't know which group you'll be in until about, I would say, the day before. And, then once you see the lists are out, you see, what order you're in, and they're groups of 16 people, which is a relatively big group. And then when you're able to get through that group, you're only allowed 3 attempts. Usually how competitions work is you have 3 attempts, and then the top however many qualify for the final, and you get another 3. It's a real psychological game changer when you have that many people and I have to throw X amount in 3 throws only. That's something that a lot of people have nerves with, because say, you have a lot of athletes go in, you have a foul on your first throw. Well, now you're down to only 2 attempts. And sometimes I've seen athletes, you go in and you have 2 fouls, and now it's all the pressure of this 1 attempt left. And I don't know if you've seen the sector of the hammer throw, but our viewpoint is there's a net. I don't know if you're very familiar with like the viewpoint from where I am, but there's a net along the back. But hammer throwers actually have a net along part of the front as well. So you have a small degree window that you're looking into, and that can be, a psychological factor as well,
Right.
But yeah, it's a big test, and it's where I seem to have thrived in this, is I was able to, surpass people. Maybe they were more nervous or what, but that's the qualification process. You take the top 12 or whoever qualifies over the automatic qualification point. So they'll have a line out there, because some of these athletes, they're on it. They take 1 throw, it goes over the line, and then you're done competing. You don't have to take any more attempts. You've qualified for the final. And then you have some other athletes who take all 3 attempts to qualify over the line. They take all 3 attempts to just be within the top 12. So that's the qualification process. And then once you get to finals, you have your top 12. They take 3 throws. The top 8 qualify for the finals.
Right. Yeah. No, I understand. Yeah. Okay. So out of the 32 that start, 12 go to maybe what you would call the semifinals, and then 8 go to the final.
Yes.
Gotcha. And tell me a little bit. You touched on it a little bit when you were talking about centimeters and how far away. But really, what does it take to, in your view, what does it take to make up that kind of difference? I mean, what sort of things does an athlete have to get better at to be able to make up, say, 7 centimeters or whatever that?
For me, as of now, and looking at it for me personally, I would say the next step, I know what is relatively in the ballpark that will be making finals, that will be in the mix. If you're able to do it on that stage, that's my biggest thing. And my biggest realization after Worlds is you don't have to have these people have these huge throws all in the off season, but it doesn't matter until you're there in the moment. That mark that happened 3 months ago, it doesn't matter. As long as you're able to perform on the biggest stage, that's the mark that lasts. So for me, I know the numbers that I want to be around, and the difference that it's going to take is just committing that much more. It's a boring answer, but it's committing that much more to the technical side.
Okay.
It's taking that, and just having quality reps. I was having a discussion with my family. My uncle was, saying, well, didn't you just give it an extra once you're in the Olympics? Weren't you nervous and all this stuff? And he was, I was getting frustrated because I was saying, no, I mean, no, technically I didn't feel too many nerves at the Olympics. He says, well, that's the problem was you didn't give your extra oomph. I said, well, no, when you think about it, what I do is so ingrained, and it has to be so mindless. I have
Right.
to training. I have to take my practice throws and make them as high quality and repetitive as I can. You want to do the same thing over and over. And so
Right.
when I go to a competition, why would I ever change that? My
Right.
nerves, my adrenaline will be up because it's a competition. But basically, you want to not change anything you do from practice to competition. And you don't want to change what you're doing from a competition to an Olympic level. You don't want to be changing too many factors.
Mhm.
So that's really what I have to, I think, start at is just have a higher standard for what my practices will be and make sure I'm doing everything I can, for that moment. That's what's really interesting about track and swimming in these sports is that no one really our moment, I would say, in the time of a throw, it's 5 seconds maybe. That's all of our training.
Right.
All of the repetitions, all of the weight training, all of the hours. That's what it's for. It's for to put together something in 5 seconds. And maybe, if I get 6 throws, a total of like, a minute or something if you count in, your time in the ring. You're allowed
Right.
1 minute in the ring. It's a few seconds that we're training for. And so to be over technical and to be thinking like, oh, I have to give my extra something, you
Right.
have to be on autopilot at that moment.
Right.
You can do, you're thinking before you step in the ring, but once you're in, autopilot and you're just trying to go. I mean, my best throws, I couldn't tell you what I was thinking about. I couldn't tell you what was happening. You kind of like black out in that moment.
Mhm.
But that's, I think, what's incredible about, track athletes is it's the heightened pressure,
Mhm.
um, things like basketball, football, it's like a game. It's something you kind of battle through. There's a lot of time and duration. And, for track athletes, swimming athletes, it's, maybe I woke up and my right trap was really, achy, and that could be a determining factor.
Sure.
Especially who has a tight Achilles or a tight calf, that could be a huge game changer. And so you're fine tuning your bodies as best as you can. I mean, these sprint athletes, they have to be extremely, well-oiled machines to be doing what they're doing. And that's, I would say that's a very similar thing to a lot of track athletes, swimming athletes, is that when you get into these moments, a lot of it's just, it's repetition, and you try not take in the moment, but you're trying to be almost as emotionless as possible at times.
Mhm. Yeah. No, I think that was a wonderful answer. I think most of the people that are listening to us will understand that no matter what sport you play, you can't be thinking about technique when you're performing, because if you do, obviously you're not going to perform well. And then also, I like what you said about football, basketball, baseball. You can make a mistake, but you've got more at bats, more plays, whatever to correct it. You don't have that. I mean, you make the mistake, and that it could be it. So that was really enlightening. I want to kind of end our conversation a little bit, just talking a little bit about you. I mean, obviously, you're still young. You mentioned that the best, the one who won the gold medal in the hammer throw was like in her late 30s. So you have plenty of time to achieve a gold medal, and I'm sure you want to do that. But obviously, you're not all about training. So what are some of the things you like to do? And someday when you do retire, what would you like to do?
Yeah. So I don't know if I will be competing past 2024. It's again like the other one. We're gonna see where I am at that point and go from there.
Right.
Because it has to be a boring lifestyle being an athlete, honestly.
Sure.
Yeah. But I so here at UT, I will hype up UT at the moment. They're
Okay.
the most incredible with their post-collegiate athletes, I have to say. In my experience, I competed for UT for 3 years. And I was able to start working with UT, I work at VFL Films, and I also do another part-time job around campus. And they're incredibly understanding of me being a professional athlete and still trying to continue and chase my dreams. And not only is it just the staff, but also like the coaches and the resources at UT. I mean, it's been incredible. You're able to use the weight room. I'm able to use training room, facilities, luckily enough. So the term BFL is it's very true. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm still here, is I just have amazing resources and relationships with people here. So that's part of also then my passion is, my non-athletic passion has been videography and doing that type of media work. Working at BFL Films, for those who don't know, it's all of the like social media videos that's done for all of all football, all the athletic department. It's done in this studio, and I've learned so much, and I've been able to really take my love for track and field too, and create videos for it, create content, travel with them to competitions, SEC, national championships, and really want to just create videos that show how incredible I think track athletes are. And so that's a little bit of where I think I'll end up after I'm done being an athlete. It'd be amazing to travel and shoot sports and all that kind of stuff. But I don't have anything too detailed. On being an athlete, we'll take it as I come. But no, I'm very fortunate enough to have had work experience and feel as though I'll be okay. I mean, track's not really what I'm doing, isn't really the money making sport,
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's been great I think it's important too to have a balanced life outside of training. Some athletes are great, just all 100% training. I do a little bit better when training. It's just another part of my day. So I have a little bit of work. I have, my other work, which is training. And then I have, I have great friends here, who's my, outside, my social life as well. So, yeah, I don't really know what will be next beyond that, but, yeah, that's a little bit of what I'm doing, now, fortunately.
Well, you're a great example of do what you love, and you'll never work a day in your life. So you just keep doing what you're doing and enjoying it. And we always like to end our interviews with Olympians by asking them one question. If you could compete in an Olympics in any city in the world, which one would it be?
Oh, it's tough. For me personally, I would think it'd be awesome to have competed in Greece.
Sure.
If I were able to compete in Greece, competing for Greece, where the Olympics is based and rooted,
right.
I mean, that would be incredible to have, a major championship there. Beyond that, that's the easy answer for me.
Right.
I mean, I think here in the U.S. is a great, place in track and field. We have Tracktown USA in Eugene, Oregon. And lucky enough, we're going to have world championships next year, hopefully. So that's a little bit of taste what it would be like if the Olympics were in the US. But I mean, I think that would be awesome. Oh my gosh, I can't think right now.
That's okay. No, we'll look at it this way.
Greece is still my answer. I think to have to be there in where it all began, and obviously being my country, to have that support. I mean, that would be incredible. Yeah.
That was, like you said, that was pretty much an easy answer. But look at it this way: in just 7 years, they're going to be in Los Angeles.
Yeah, we'll see. I know my Greek coach is telling me you'll be fine. You'll be young enough to still be doing that.
There you go.
I don't know what's beyond 24 yet. I'll cross that bridge when we get there.
That's right. And you shouldn't have to think that far. Just take each day one at a time. Well, Stamatia, we certainly want to thank you so much for your time. We've enjoyed talking to you. We wish you nothing but the best of luck. And we hope that someday we will be able to have you back on the podcast with a gold medal around your neck. And we can talk about, or a silver or a bronze. It doesn't matter.
That's the goal.
Well,
you'll have me back for sure. I'll be back.
Definitely. Definitely. Okay, good. The reason I said or silver or bronze, as you know, in these past Olympics, there was a lot of talk about, especially from the United States side, about a lot of pressure on the athletes to win and that sort of thing. And obviously, you're proud of your performance, no matter what no matter what medal you win, you should be proud of your performance. So yeah, that's why I put it that way.
Oh no, I understand. Yeah.
Well, listen, take care of yourself. We wish you the best of luck, and we'll have you on again in the future.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time.
We thank you. That was Stamatia Scarvelis, 2020 Olympian for Greece. We appreciate having her on, and we look forward to talking to her again soon.